Welcome to Taking Care of Business on Current Radio News Talk 1180 for the absolute best in Saturday Talk Radio at 1 o'clock and Saturday also at 1230 KGEO at 10 o'clock. For the best in Wednesday Talk Radio, we're on 1410 KERI at 1 o'clock. And now we're in Albuquerque, New Mexico on 1000 KKIM. I'm Marty Pay, and my co-host Clay Corner is gone until next week. Behind the big board is the man who keeps this thing running, Greg Held. We had a great show last week with Mary Amelia, author of Love Thyself, a life guide for women. And in the second half, we had a man who, like our guest today, I feel is a true statesman, Congressman Tom McClintock. Before we introduce today's guest, I want to make a few comments about that interview we had with Tom McClintock last week. Now, granted, I'm just a middle-aged guy with limited social skills on the radio. But one thing I learned from an old friend of mine, you fool me once, it's my fault. Shame on me. You fool me twice, shame on... Well, actually, you fool me once, shame on you. You fool me a second time, shame on me. Reagan, Bush, they all fell for that bait and switch that we allowed to happen as far as the promise of, let us increase taxes now and we'll give you a tax rebate down the road and we'll cut spending down the road. I feel that's happening again, unfortunately, where all of a sudden the Republicans in Congress are saying, "Okay, we'll settle for this. We'll go along with the tax increases," and they're going along with the promise of down the road cutting spending. It's not going to happen. It's a pipe dream. We've fallen for this 2 or 3 times before in the last 20 years in history. If it's any kind of teacher is teaching us that we're not going to be able to fall for this again. So I hope the people in Washington don't exclude the base, the Tea Party Republicans, the Ron Paul people. We need to expand the base, and we need to really incorporate these people into the party. So, unfortunately, we tend to be going the other way, and I hope that changes, because if not, we're gonna lose again in 2 years, and we'll lose again in 4 years. So, with that commentary over, I'm excited about today's guest. Our guest for the whole hour is a gentleman we had the pleasure of interviewing in September. I had the honor of working with him years ago when I was part of Christian Coalition 20 years ago. He worked in the Reagan administration. He was a candidate for senator against Barbara Boxer 20 years ago. Bruce Herschensohn. Bruce, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Thanks so much, Marty. Good to talk with you.
Well, Bruce, unfortunately, your book, which I think is a fantastic book, Obama's Globe, A President's Abandonment of U.S. Allies Around the World, I was hoping that book was going to be redundant after the election because Obama wouldn't have been president. But
that's that's exactly what I hoped.
It's probably more relevant now than it was before the election.
Well, unfortunately, but there isn't that much that can be done about it as there was before the election. Well, what could have been done about it before the election is that he would have lost, but he didn't.
Yeah. What kind of response are you getting to your book?
I beg your pardon?
What kind of response are you getting to your book?
It was going great prior to the election, and really what I expected after the election. I didn't think it had you just don't. There's no reason for people to get excited about it.
Really? I thought there'd be more excitement about it now because...
No, it went way down in sales. And that's the least of our problems.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I don't know if you remember, when we had you on in September, I ended the program with a question, and I only allowed you to give me a one-word answer. And that question was, it was a little unfair, but unfortunately we were running out of time. And the question was, Israel and Iran, do you think Israel is going to attack Iran and do something about their nuclear capacity? And you said yes.
Right,
so,
I still think yes.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'd like to give you a chance to expand on that answer.
Well, I don't think that it can depend on us. I believe that with all that President Obama has done, particularly since his speech of last year in May of 2011, in which he had given a speech that really ripped apart. I mean, if anyone was really listening, you could tell the guy has no great interest in this place. First and foremost, I believe, I am convinced that foreign policy is a nuisance to this president. Mm-hmm. He doesn't think of it as prime, as the most important reason that he is president, and that foreign policy is the stuff of presidents. He doesn't believe that. He is convinced that his job is to do all those things that he can to bring about a different U.S. than the one we've all known.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go be lengthy on that. I just want to say regarding Israel, when it talks about a red line, of course its red line is sooner than ours, because I don't know where ours is. But I would assume that with Netanyahu, it has to be prior to the time that they have a nuclear bomb, a nuclear warhead on a missile. It has to be prior, not when you find out that it has it.
Yeah, I agree. We're having a conversation with author, commentator Bruce Herschensohn. It's funny you mentioned the term, Bruce, red line, because I listened to an interview with Michael Oren and the ambassador to the United States, and he used that term, red line, and he was pretty candid about it. He said the red line, basically, as you just mentioned, is when Israel feels, up to the point Israel feels it can take out the nuclear capacity.
Sure.
And they're looking at spring.
I would think so. I don't know obviously, I don't know precisely where it is or what time it is, but I know it has to be preemptive. It can't be after the bomb is there, and that's one thing that I say that we have just stopped ever doing anything preemptively in this administration. I remember it was almost 2 years, pretty close to 2 years ago. I gave a commentary, and I was doing something, I forgot exactly what it was, talking about Syria, and saying that there were placards that were being held up covering the faces of many people, and this was in Homs, H-O-M-S, of Syria, and it said, "Help us!" ! Help us, or we will all be killed. At that time, there was something like 5,000 or 6,000 people that already had been killed. Now the number is estimated to be over 40,000. We don't do anything. We just keep on talking about how angry we are. I see angry expressions on the face of President Obama, angry expression on the face of Secretary of State Clinton. I don't want to see any anger. I want to see those things done that need to be done.
You know, Bruce, unfortunately, I mean, I'm dating myself here a little bit, but I remember back in I think it was 56, 57, when Hungary, same situation in Hungary, when they were trying to break away from Russia, and they pleaded with us, please help us, and we just sat there, it was deaf ears.
And, well, it was even worse than that. The Voice of America at that time had given some radio commentaries in which it was suggested, it wasn't said with precision, but it was certainly suggested that we would help them, and we didn't. So I certainly agree with you. I'll tell you something else. One that almost anyone living at this time would remember, the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes.
And President Kennedy gives a speech to the American people. He didn't say what we were going to do, and he didn't sound angry. He sounded sad, and he sounded strong at the same time, sad, in saying what we were doing, a quarantine of those vessels that were coming within the area of this hemisphere. And it was done. It was that is what you do. That's what presidents do. If they're going to attack somewhere, they say, the 101st Airborne has already taken off and is headed to Point X. You do those things. You don't just act angry. As I said, President Kennedy, my God, the whole nation got behind him. Had to, because you knew he was not just sincere in what we would do, we were doing it.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you bring up the Cuban Missile Crisis, because that's what we're looking at, the 50th anniversary, 2 months ago. And, here you have Kennedy, taking that decisive action. It was a chess game, and Khrushchev lost in the long run.
Indeed.
Yeah, even though he got missiles from Turkey, in Turkey pointing towards him, eliminated, but two years.
By the way, I'll just interject. Mm-hmm. It's likely that they would have been taken out in short time anyway. They were
old.
They were not they were not still potent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all we're doing now, and it brings up a point that I'm kind of confused at when I look at this. Is he just that naive, President Obama? Because you look at things like, well, there's a great comment, and I think I saw this in your book. I've heard it before, from an Afghan warlord who says, "You have all the watches, we have all the time."
Exactly.
So they're playing the Vietnam game, which is we just wait these guys out because they're not going to be here for the long term.
And that's not just in Afghanistan. It's that way, I think, all over the world. And you ask why? There's no way that I can psychoanalyze this guy. I don't want to psychoanalyze anyone. That isn't my stuff. But it just seems to be after living with him as the president of the United States for 4 years, it seems to me that he does want the United States to be like any other nation. It was the phrase that was made by an advisor of his, who remains to this day anonymous, who said we wanted to lead from behind in Libya. Well, yeah, when you lead, and I see the relevance of saying lead from behind, because that is what we do. We don't lead a coalition. We've always led NATO. We didn't let others lead it while we sort of stayed behind as part of it. The danger in staying behind is when the new regime takes over, when the old one is gone and forgotten, and the new one's in. They don't have any obligation to us. They don't look at us as the ones who did what put them in office.
Exactly. Bruce, when we come back from the break, let's talk a little bit more about Afghanistan.
Sure.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Current Radio, News Talk 1180.